Yeah. So our block release, we shall start it from topic number 1. Not topic number 1, but topic number 4, time value of money. Topic number 1 to 3 is basically theory questions. I would request us, those who have the revision kits, for RCM, to utilize them. Then other materials for theory, just utilize them for us to move on swiftly. Now, we want to start with topic number 4, which is time value for money. Topic number 4, time value for money. So here we shall be discussing the concepts just in brief and doing some of the illustrations available, so that we can move on faster. So time value of money, it states that the value of a shilling today, is not equal to the value of the same shilling in the future. Therefore, many people will always prefer to get the shilling today rather than in future, right? And I think we can do a good illustration. We can have a good illustration. Sometimes back, there are some commodities which we used to buy with to buy them at a certain price, but currently the prices are high, right? The prices are high. Let's say, for example, a loaf of bread. Initially, it was being bought for as low as 20 shillings. But currently, as per yesterday's reviews, now bread is selling at 55 shilling. Right? So this one best explains the time value of money. The person who bought the same bread like 10 years ago bought it at 20 shillings, but today the same person is buying it at 55 shillings, right? So this one well indicates that when you have a coin today, it's worth more important than having it the same coin in future. And this is what the banks uses, and other financial facilities. They use this concept of time value of money in calculating the loan amortization schedule. And even your savings. They'll take your money today and return it in future at a certain price, right? And they can also give you the same money today, then you return it in future at a certain price. So here we include the aspect of interest. So there are things that we need to note. Under time value of money. We have two concepts of time value of money. We have compounding techniques and discounting techniques. Compounding techniques and discounting techniques. So, compounding technique is the determination of future value. Compounding is the determination of future value, and discounting is the determination of present value. So we can have a small illustration here. And say that today is the present, and the day after today will be the future. The day today is the present, and the day after today is the future. So when you want to determine the present, we shall always do what? We shall always compound. we shall always compound, and no. We shall always discount. And when we are looking at the future, we shall do what? We shall compound, right? So we shall either discount when we are determining the present value, or we can do what? We can compound when determining the future value, right? So under discounting and compounding, we have two concepts that we need to understand. Under compounding and discounting, we have two concepts that we need to understand. That is a lump sum, and an annuity. We have those two concepts, lump sum and an annuity. Lump sum, it has two definitions. The term lump sum has got two definitions, and the first definition is that is the payment or receipt. It is the payment or receipt of a fixed amount of value, payment or receipt of a fixed amount of value, either at the beginning or at the end of the period, either at the beginning or at the end of the period. We can also say that lump sum, we can also say that the term lump sum is the payment or receipt of irregular cash flows, payment or receipt of irregular cash flows over a certain period of time, payment of receipt of irregular cash flows over a certain period of time. So while we are determining our lump sum, we shall always underline these two terms, irregular and fixed, irregular and fixed. And this will be our determining factor whether we are using lump sum. Whenever we are using lump sum, we also have this other term known as the annuity. We also have that other term known as the annuity. And annuity, we said, is the payment or receipt of regular cash flows. Regular cash flows. Payment or receipt of regular cash flows at the beginning or at the end of the period for a certain duration of time. For a certain duration of time. So these are the key things that we need to know under compounding and discounting. So while we are determining the discount factor, when we are discounting for a lump sum, let us start with when we are compounding. When we are compounding for a lump sum, it means that we have a lump sum amount or we are having irregular cash flows. We always use this formula. So when determining the compound factor of a lump sum, we shall always use this formula, which is 1 plus r raised to power n. 1 plus r raised to power n. That is the compounding factor. The compounding factor. Therefore, you'll take your amount, then multiply with this compounding factor to get the value of the future value, to get the future value. So we also have the annuity. We also have the annuity, and this will always be determined as follows. Annuity will be determined as follows. We'll say 1 plus r raised to power n minus 1 over r. 1 plus r raised to power n minus 1 over r. That is the compounding factor of an annuity. Then we need to note that n is the number of periods. Number of periods, while r is the interest factor. It is the interest factor or the interest rate, right? So that is all about compounding. That is all about compounding. Then we have another term known as discounting. Discounting. So to discount is to determine the present value. This means that we have future cash flows. We have cash flows that are into the period. Now we want to determine the present value of all those cash flows. And again, under discounting, we have lump sum. We have lump sum, and we can determine the value of a lump sum by saying 1 plus r raised to power negative n. 1 plus r raised to power negative n. 1 plus r raised to power negative n. While we can also say to determine the value of an annuity, we can always say 1 minus 1 plus r raised to power negative n over r. 1 minus 1 plus r raised to power negative n over r. This is the formula of determining the discount factor of an annuity. And under discounting, we also have another formula, which is the annuity to infinity. Annuity to infinity. Annuity to infinity or perpetuity. Here is when you are having the cash flows until unforeseeable future. Until unforeseeable future. So we are having regular cash flows and up to a duration that is unknown. So we shall be receiving or paying those cash flows until when we don't know. So to determine the value of an annuity to infinity, we always use the formula 1 over r. We always use the formula 1 over r, right? So this is all about what we need to know under discounting, and this is what we need to know under compounding. So under the cut that I had issued in our previous, there's a cut that I had issued initially. We said that we shall use that as for our block release, right? We said that we shall use that cut for our block release. We shall start with question number 2. Let me have a look at it. Let me just open it here. Question number 2, I believe we are all on that question. So, here, let us just see that question. Just a minute. I opened the question. So we have that question there with us. It says Bamba Limited, question number 2, we have it there on the screen. Bamba Limited has constructed a commercial building in an upmarket location. Bamba Limited has constructed a commercial building in an upmarket location in your capital city, which the management intends to sell at 8.4 million. The management intends to sell at 8.4 million. However, a prospective tenant has offered to rent the offices for 8 years. A prospective tenant has offered to rent the offices for 8 years at a fixed annual rent of 160,000. At a fixed annual rent of 160,000. At the end of the 8th year, the building will be sold. At the end of 8th year, the building will be sold. A real estate advisor estimated that the price of the building will increase by 3% per annum. The price of the building will increase by 3% per annum. The company's cost of capital is 5%. Company's cost of capital is 5%. Required. Advise the management of Bamba Limited on whether to sell the building now or rent out the offices. On whether to sell the building now or rent out the offices. So that is the question that I want us to tackle. That is the question that I want us to tackle. This one well elaborates the concept of time value of money. It well elaborates the concept of time value of money. So what we need to do here, allow me to rub here. I want us to go slowly about that question. We are told that this Bamba Limited has got two options. Bamba Limited has got two options. Option number one is to sell the building today. Sell the building today. The selling price will be 8.4 million. 8.4 million, right? That is the option that he has, the first option that he has. But we have option number two. Option number two is to sell, no, to rent the house for 8 years, rent the house for 8 years, then sell it, right? He has the option to rent the house for 8 years, then sell it, right? So we are asked that the real estate advisor estimated that the price of the building will increase by 3%. Price of the building will increase by 3%, meaning this 8.4 price today, it will increase by 3% every year, right? It will increase by 3% every year. So since you are told that we will sell the house after 8 years, we need to know the selling price of the house after 8 years because it will be increasing by 3% every year, right? It will be increasing by 3% every year. So, to determine this, we need to use our compounding formula. We need to determine our compounding formula and to be specific for a lump sum. To be specific for a lump sum. So it's a compounding for a lump sum because we have 8.4 million, which is payment or receipt at the beginning. This one will be paid at the end of the year, right? Fixed amount at the end of the year. So we have an increasing rate of 3%, right? So we shall say 8.4 million multiplied by, we multiply by the compounding factor. First of all, we determine the growth. This 3% is the growth. 3% is the growth. 3% is the growth. So we shall say we multiply by 1 plus 0.03 raised to power 8, right? So that we can determine the price after 8 years. So this one here, we are determining the growth of the growth. We are determining the price after 8 years. Price after 8 years. So when we use our formula, here we get what value? Here we get what value? When we use our calculators, what is the value that we get there? Wale wa calculator. 10,640, 863. Thank you, Nancy. 10,640, 10,640, 863. So this is the value of the house after 8 years, right? Value of the house after 8 years. Now, what we are considering here is what will be the price of the house today, so that we can compare if we can sell or if we can rent, right? So this is the price of the house after 8 years. So we need to determine what? We need to determine the present value of this amount. We need to determine the present value of this amount. So we can come and say the present value will be, this amount, 10,64, 863, we multiply by PVIF, 8 years. Now we won't use the growth rate. This was our growth rate, right? Hata tumia growth rate, we shall now use the cost of capital as our discount factor. We shall use the cost of capital as our discount factor. The cost of capital here, we were told that the company's cost of capital is 5%. So it will be 5%, 8 years. 5%, 8 years. That is what we shall use. And to determine your PVIF, 5%, 8 years, we have two ways of determining it. We can use the table, or we can use the formula. The formula of PVIF 5%, 8 years, it will be 1 plus R raised to power negative N. 1 plus R raised to power negative N. Let us believe that we know how to use the table and also using the formula, right? Let us believe we all know how to use the table and the formula together. So in using the table, let me just explain it. In using the table, let me just elaborate it there. I'm sharing a screen here for a table. So the examiner will always give you a table, the present value table, We have two tables in our screen here. And the first one, we are told that the present value of one received at the end of n periods. Then the second one, we have present value of an annuity of 1 per period for n periods. In our question here, we are told that we shall use the PVIF, present value interest factor. Since it's a single figure, it's a lump sum, we shall use table number 1, the present value of 1 received at the end of n periods. We are told that you are having PVIFA 5%, 8 years. PVIFA 5%, 8 years. That is what we shall adopt. Therefore, we shall determine the PVIFA. PVIFA, we are told, is 5%. On our row number 1, we are having the percentage rates, and on our column number 1, we are having the periods. So we are told 5%. At 5%, you will come at 5% here. We shall be at 5% here where my cursor is, where my pointer is, at 5%, at 5% here. Then we shall look at 8 periods. 8 periods. You are having 8 periods here where my cursor, where my pointer is again. So at 8 periods. So you will come all along up to where we have 5%, which is this here, where my pointer is as well. We are having what value? I think it's 64.46, if I'm not wrong. Sorry, not 64, but 67.68. We are having 67.68 here. So that is your discounting rate. That is your discounting factor, not rate. Your discounting factor will be 67.68. 67.68. Just see where my pointer is. 67.68. This is the value which has got 5%, and 8 years. So we are having 0.6768. 0.6768 as our discount factor. So we have our 0.6768, then you multiply by the value 10,680,863. When you multiply by that, we'll be able to get what? We'll be able to get our present value. So we shall say you multiply by our discount factor of 0.6768 to get what? We multiply by our value to get 720, 2158. Mwingine 720, 2158. Me, I'm getting 720, 1739.9, which is 720, 1740. I think it's the decimals. It is the decimals that we are using. Me, my value here is 7,201,739.9, which is, when you round off to the whole number, is 720, 740, right? This is the value that I have. Right? So this is the value of the house. This is the value of the house after 8 years. When we discount it, we'll have 720, 740. Then we have another aspect. Since we were told here that we will rent the house, then sell it. Now we've determined the value when we sell it. Now I want us to determine the value when we rent it, right? My table is telling me is 6768 and not 6763. My table is showing 68. Unless you are using a different table. So I want us to determine the value of the rent. The value of the rent. The value of the rent, we are told that a prospective tenant has offered to rent the offices for 8 years. When we rent, we are having 8 years for renting, 8 years for renting, and the amount is 160,000. 160,000 per annum. 160,000 per annum, right? So, and our cost of capital, the same is 5%. Cost of capital is 5%. Cost of capital is 5%, right? So, since you are receiving this rent, on monthly basis, not monthly, but on annual basis, it means that it is an annuity with the fact that it is regular and is for a certain duration of time, right? So we shall be using our annuity table. We shall be using our annuity table to determine what? The present value. So here we shall say that to get our PVFA, 5%, 8 years, we still can use two formulas, either the table, we can either use the table or the formula. We can either use the table or the formula. We can either use the table or the formula. Those are the two options that we have. In using the formula, when we use the formula, we can say PVFA is equal to 1 minus 1 plus R raised to power negative n over R, right? We can use that, which will be 1 minus 1 plus 0.05 raised to power negative 8 over 0.05 to get your answer, right? To get your answer. Or you can use the table as well, We can use the table as well. Is that table of mine? I've just shared it on the screen. To determine the 5%, 8 years. 5%, 8 years. %, 8 years. When you look at my cursor there, I'm getting a PVFA of what amount? 5%, 8 years, 6.4632. 6.4632. That is my PVFA. I believe we can all see that when you take row number 5, row of 5% under column of row of 8 years, and column of 5%, where the meet is at 6.4632, 6.4632, right? 6.4632. Therefore, you take your answer and multiply by 160. 160 times 6.4632 to get what value? What value will we get? Six, 4, 6, 3. Times 160,000. I'm getting 1063 for 11. 1063 for 11. 1063 for 11. That is what I'm having. James, Tobias. Kwani answer zetu hazifanani? Our calculators are not the same. This is 160,000 times 6.6463. Oh, it's not 64, but 46. 4632. 1034, 112. 1034, 112. So that is my answer. 1034, 112. 1034, 112. So you see, we have these two concepts. We have these two answers here. In option number 2, we were told that we'll rent the house, then we sell it, right? So when we rent the house and sell it, we'll have the total value as 1034, 112 plus 7201, 740 as our total figure, as our total value of the house, right? So you can say we are having a total value of 8235, 852, 8235, 852, right? So this is our answer. When we rent the house, then sell it later. And when we sell the house today, we'll have what? 8.4. We'll have 8.4, right? So we were asked to advise the management of Banda Limited whether to sell the building now or rent it. So when we sell it now, we'll get a return of 8.4. When we rent it, we'll get a return of 8.2. So it is better we do what? It is better to sell it now. So the advice will advise him to sell the house. Sell the house today. Sawa sawa. So I believe we've had that concept of time value of money using this question. Abdi, are we using annuity in discounting? In discounting, we have two options. We can either use an annuity or a lump sum, depending with the question. Just as I said, we can either use a lump sum or an annuity, depending with the question. If you've been given a regular cash flows, If you've been given regular cash flows, we shall always use an annuity. When you've been given irregular cash flows or a fixed amount, when you're given regular cash flows or a fixed amount, we shall always do what? We shall always use a lump sum. For example, here in our first illustration, here when we are determining the present value of the amount received after 8 years when selling the house, we used a lump sum, right? Here we used a lump sum. Here we used a lump sum because we had this fixed amount at the end of the period. We had this fixed amount at the end of the period. And on this part here, we used annuity. We used annuity. We used annuity. Where is the annuity? We used annuity here because we used annuity because we were receiving regular cash flows. We were receiving regular cash flows as our rent, right? We were receiving regular cash flows as our rent. Therefore, the nature of the question will dictate. The nature of the question will dictate what to use. What to use. So I believe that is all about time value of money, unless there's a question. Unless there's a question. If there is no question, allow me to move to the next concept. Allow me to move to the next concept. The next concept is valuation concept in finance. Valuation concept in finance. Valuation concept in finance. Under valuation concept, here we basically determine the value of a security. We basically determine the value of a security or an asset at a specified period of time. Under valuation, we normally value different securities, and the main securities that we have on valuation, we have the ordinary share. We have the ordinary share. We have ordinary share. The items that we need to value. We have preference shares. And we have debt or bond or debentures or loan notes. Those are the three main items that we need to value. Those are the three main items that we need to value under valuation concepts. Under valuation concepts. Let us start in valuing our bonds. Let us start in valuing our bonds. Valuing our bonds. When valuing a bond, we can first introduce a bond and say, this is a debt capital. It is a debt capital. It is a debt capital that issues, that enables the holder to receive interest. To receive interest at a certain period of time. To receive interest of regular amounts at a certain period of time, and upon maturity, if any, to receive the principal amount or the conversion value. To receive the principal amount or the conversion value. So on that illustration, it tries to tell us that we have two types of bonds. That illustration tells us that we have two types of bonds. The first one is irredeemable. We have irredeemable bond and a redeemable. We have irredeemable bond and a redeemable bond. Irredeemable bond, this is a bond that has no maturity period. It has no maturity period. Therefore, the bondholder is not entitled to the principal amount. The bondholder is not entitled to the principal amount unless the business is winding up, unless the business is winding up or is under liquidation. Therefore, the bondholder is only entitled to the interest payment up to the interest payment to infinity, the interest payment to infinity, while the redeemable bond, the redeemable bond allows the bondholder to do what? To redeem the bond. It allows the bondholder to redeem the bond. Therefore, he is entitled to two interests here, to two benefits here. Number one, interest payment. He is entitled to interest. He is entitled to interest. This is specified amount of interest. Specified amount of interest upon during the period, and upon maturity, he is entitled to a redemption value. He is entitled to a redemption value. He is entitled to a redemption value. We also have another kind of bond known as a convertible bond. We also have another type of bond known as a convertible bond. A convertible bond and a redeemable bond are the same. Convertible bond and a redeemable bond are the same. The only difference is that upon maturity, a redeemable bond is entitled to a redemption value. He is entitled to a redemption value, while a convertible bond at the end of the period or at the maturity date, he is entitled to a convertible value. Convertible value. And a convertible value is always equal to either the value of ordinary shares, either the value of ordinary share capital or preference share capital. It will always be equal to the value of ordinary share capital or preference share capital as specified into the agreement, Therefore, when determining the value of an irredeemable bond, we can say that we always use this formula to determine the value of an irredeemable bond. We always use this formula. We can say that the market value will be equal to the interest over the cost of debt, which is KD, the cost of debt, which is KD. Cost of debt as our KD. Right? So that is how we shall be determining the value of an irredeemable bond, In case of a redeemable bond, in case of a redeemable bond, we shall use this formula, redeemable bond, And what we need to note is that redeemable bond has got two options: the period when we have the bond and the period when we are releasing the bond. The period when we have the bond and the period when we are releasing the bond. So to determine the market value, we will say that Here we shall use the interest. Interest, you multiply with the discount factor, which is the PVFA. PVFA R% KD. Not R% KD, but KD N years. KD N years. KD N years. So, why are we using KD and not the interest rate? Why are we using the KD and not interest rate? When we are determining the value or when we are valuing our assets, we always use the cost of capital. The cost of capital as our discount factor. If it is debt, we use the cost of debt as our discount factor. If it's ordinary share, we use our KE as the discount factor. And if it is the preference share, we use our KP or the cost of preference share as our discount factor. Therefore, we need to note that KD is used as the discount factor. So in determining the market value of a redeemable bond, we have this part number one to determine the value of interest. Then we add the redemption value. We add the redemption value. The redemption value will be determined by taking the redemption value multiplied by your PVF KD N years. PVF KD N years. PVF KD N years. What we need to note here, from the concept of time value of money, on our first bit, we are receiving interest annually. Therefore, if it's regular amount, we use what? The annuity table. Therefore, we are saying PVFA times interest. On the second bit, we are having a redemption value. Redemption value is received at the end of the period. Therefore, it is a fixed amount, which is a lump sum, right? A fixed amount, which is a lump sum, which is why we are using PVF, right? Sawa. So this is what we have in determining the value of a redeemable bond. Again, we have the last bit of a convertible bond. Using a convertible bond, now we are not receiving the redemption value, but we are receiving the conversion value. So here, to determine the value of a convertible bond, we shall just say you take your interest, multiply by PVFA KD N years plus your conversion value multiplied by PVF KD N years, right? So that is what we shall be adopting. This is what we need to note. On conversion, the bond can be converted at par. At a premium, or at a discount, right? Those are the things that these are the bases that we can convert our debt, our convertible bond, at par, at a premium, or a discount. When we say we are converting at par, it means that we are converting at the same price. of which we bought it, the same price at which we bought it, the same price that we bought the asset, right? So at par is at the same price, so our conversion price will be similar to our face value. The conversion price will be similar to our face value. Then if you are told it's at premium it means that we are converting it at a price above, the par value, the price above the par value, the price above the par value. So our conversion value will be there, par value. So again, when you are converting it, at a discount, it means that we are converting at a price, below the par value, Therefore, those three concepts are very crucial. When we are valuing our convertible bond. Sawa sawa? Those are the crucial points that we need to know. So, I believe we have had a good time, a good refresher of what all this means, So, when we meet in our next class, which is tomorrow, we shall continue from here in determining the value of preference shares and ordinary shares. And then we shall look at the trends as we tackle question number 2B. So allow me to end the class. If there is no question,